Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Robert's philosophy, and we are discussing regarding the case taking, a practical part of the organon of medicine. Certain aspects about the case taking, what are the do's and what are the don'ts, which we have discussed in length in last 3 lectures. Today we are going to go ahead with the part 4. So many aspects he has tried to explain with his own words what Hahnemann have explained in the organ of medicine. He has started with 83 aphorism and completed at 104. And same thing, Robert has tried to explain it in his simple, lucid language to explain the details what exactly Hahnemann's thought is there in the case taking. So we were on page number 78. The second paragraph which we have finished. Let us start with the third one. The in acute illnesses, take the acute symptoms, carefully record each one, and find out all there is to know about them. Likewise, in the chronic picture, record all symptoms as far as you can, dig out the symptoms and the sequence of the symptom pictures and prescribe for that state. So he is explaining, he is comparing how your case taking should be there in acute case and how your case taking should be there in chronic case. In acutes, you have to look for acute symptomatology. What is present symptomatology? What the patient presents in last, since he has started that acute disease. Those symptoms are very recent origin and they are clear in the patient's mind, and you can get the characteristicness of it very easily because they are of a recent origin. And that's why you get the whole data. You get a very perfect symptom and with which you can approach towards the totality and ultimately with the remedy. But things are rather different in chronic case. In chronic case, you have to dig out the symptoms. The word which he has used is very important, dig out. You have to go into deep, you have to ask, because it's not of a recent origin, and many times patient forgets the original symptoms of the disease. Patient forgets the exact sensation, patient forgets many times the modalities, patient forgets many times the concomitants. And that's why in chronic cases, you have to make it complete. Whereas in acute, it itself comes evidently very easily as a complete picture. So difference lies in case taking in acute as compared to the chronic. However, what he says, however, if you are dealing with an acute condition, limit yourself to dealing with the acute state alone. What he is saying, if you are dealing with acute condition, just see what is acute state, finished. Don't go to what past symptoms were there, what family history was there, no need. So if you are dealing with acute condition, limit yourself to dealing with the acute state alone and do not at the same time attempt to dip into what has been a chronic state. So when you deal with the acutes, deal with the acutes only. No need to go into the chronic states. No need to find it out what was there in the past. Because if you have to handle the acute, just see that state, find it out as a minimum for that. Acute manifestations show themselves with surprising clearness, and to include chronic symptoms that have been manifest at other periods will but confuse the picture. So if you are dealing with acute state of the chronic patient and you are mixing them together, then you'll be at confusion. Then you will not come to the right remedy. For that purpose, it is necessary to differentiate what is acute and what is chronic. If acute is there in front of you, just take that, find it out the remedy for that specific state. So he is very clear with his vision that acute should be treated with acutes and chronic should be treated with chronic. Don't make a confusion of acute with the chronic. Remember, we must prescribe for the totality of the symptom picture, and not for any one symptom alone, but for the complete picture as it is presented in the individual. So it very clearly explains that when we are not dealing with single symptom, we are dealing with the totality of the symptoms. Because that totality is the individualistic totality. That is the characteristic totality which individualizes that patient from another patient. So we have to prescribe for an individual, not for a symptom. In an acute explosion, the chronic picture will retreat completely. Therefore, in treating complete picture that is present, there will be no need to take the chronic picture into consideration. So chronic presentation is rather different. If acute manifestations happens during the chronic state, you deal with acute state with a different remedy. Take into consideration that acute state. Look for proper symptoms, the location, sensation, modality, concomitant of those acutes, so that you can get a characteristicness of it and you can get very perfect simillimum for that specific state. The original state, chronic state, you should not mix with that acute. At the close of the acute attack, we again see the chronic picture. Then will be the time to deal with it. So what he's saying, after completing acute and if it has been cured, the chronic will come out and then it is necessary to deal with chronic. At the close of acute attack, we again see the chronic picture. Then will be the time to deal with it. In fact, there is no time in the history of case when we can see the picture of chronic underlying condition so plainly as at the end of an acute attack, after the acute condition have subsided. Therefore, after dealing properly with acute attack and waiting until it subsides, we be will be in a position to see clearly the picture of a chronic case. This condition, following acute illness, is much more apt to be the manifestation of chronic condition. That is to be the aftermath of acute condition, as is popularly supposed. So the picture becomes very clear when acute state is covered with acute remedy. If it was confusing to at the start when you would have deal with that same patient as a chronic one, but now the patient has presented acute state, you reach to the acute remedy, you have given that remedy to the patient and you have waited for the result. The acute state disappears, and when acute state disappears, the original chronic state reappears, and that gives you exactly what characteristic totality is there in that chronic state. Then your work becomes simple. Then you can reach to the right chronic remedy and you can deal with that chronic state with a proper remedy. So whenever acute manifestations happens in chronic states, it is always better for us to get a clear idea of the acute as well as the chronic states and to treat that patient. So he is giving very exact, clear-cut idea that when you deal with the acutes, always deal with acute remedy. And then whenever the action vanishes and acute state disappears, chronic comes out with a strong indication with which it is easy to grab a remedy. In considering the totality, we cannot overemphasize the necessity of getting the complete description of each symptom as to its location, character, and modality. The modalities, the aggravations and ameliorations are the most important. Next in order come the character of sensation. So what is saying, in considering the totality, we cannot overemphasize the necessity of getting the complete description of each and every symptom. Many times you cannot get. Patient tells you certain vague symptoms. Yes, you must ask, but you should not force the patient to tell exactly where is the location, where is the sensation, what is the sensation. It should not be. It should come out randomly. You just ask, how do you feel? And if patient narrates properly, then it becomes simple. If he doesn't, don't force him. That's what he is telling. At the same time, modalities plays a very vital role. It is your duty to ask what are the things which aggravates your problem, what are the things which ameliorates your problem. Those questions should be there, but you should not overemphasize only on that part. The sensations are also important, modalities are also important. Most important symptoms, of course, are the general symptoms that pertain to the patient as a whole. So when dealing with the chronic case, The symptoms which are related to the person as whole and denoted by the prefix I are very important. Those are called as general symptoms. Because those symptoms gives you an individuality. Those symptoms which on the basis of which you rely more comfortably, because those are symptoms which are individualistic symptoms. So physical generals plays vital role. At the same time, mental generals also plays the vital role. Here you can get exact remedy in chronic states. And that's why the more concentrate more on the general symptom. The most important, of course, are the general symptoms that pertain to the patient as a whole. Then come the aggravation and amelioration. The mental symptoms rank very highly for the reason that they point the man himself, and they may be classed under the generals to a marked degree. So whenever we analyze the symptoms into basically two groups, the general symptoms and particular symptoms. The generals, again, we classify into two types, the mental generals and physical generals. The mental generals, further we classify will and emotions, intellect and understanding, and last is memory. And when we think about particulars, again we classify particular characteristic and particular common. And when we evaluate, we give maximum rank to the mental generals, then physical generals, and physical generals, then the particular characteristic. This is the sequence. This is what he is explaining. The thorough examination of the patient from every possible angle should be carried through, not for the gross diagnostic symptoms, important as these may be from diagnostic and hygienic point of view also. So see what he is explaining, a thorough examination of the patient from every possible angle should be carried through. So clinical examination is also important after the history taking. One should not miss anything in the case, and one should be a good clinician. One should examine each and every aspect of the patient, and that's why after completing the case taking, it is necessary to go for clinical examination of the patient, where first you will find it out the big parameters which are called as vital parameters, and then the right from head to toe, every aspect which you have to examine, find it out, is there anything wrong or is there anything characteristic enough on basis of which you can think about the remedy. So you have to look towards the patient in a proper way. If the patient is there in front of you and you are observing and he is having a very typical wart and the tip of nose. See, this is observation. This is a clinical observation. Patient comes with a typical wart at the tip of the nose. So what you will think? Any remedy comes to your mind? So this is what he wants
Causticum.
to. Huh? Correct. Very correct. It is the
Causticum.
causticum. Very correct. It is causticum. So these are the things which you have to look for. What is their characteristic enough that you have to look for? Clinical examination gives you individualization. Just see the tongue and you can find it out what patient might be. So the clinical examination always helps. The thorough examination of the patient from every possible angle should be carried through, not for the gross diagnostic symptoms, important as these may be from diagnostic and hygienic point of view also. From the curative point of view, we should not fail to elicit all the possible clues that may lead us to the remedy. So even for the therapeutic point of view, you have to look for it. So nothing you should omit. You must always look and find it out what is characteristic enough that will help you to come to the right remedy. So it is hidden either in subjective symptoms, it may be hidden in objective symptoms, it may be hidden in the clinical examination where you can get all those clues, and those clues are very important. Those are very essential in your practice. So examining tongue, observing the face, observing what is there on his face, finding it out, the expressions on the face, everything matters for you. And that those things are very helpful to reach to the right remedy. Subjective and objective symptoms are to be elicited and recorded. So both the symptoms plays a vital role, the subjective as well as objective. We are not an modern practitioner, so that will give more importance to the objective. In fact, from homeopathic standpoint of view, the subjective symptoms are very, very important. What are the subjective symptoms? The symptoms which are felt by the patient and not observable to an observer are called as subjective symptoms. So, for example, headache is the subjective symptom, pain in abdomen is the subjective symptom, pain in chest is the subjective symptom. And when we think about the objective, the symptoms which are felt by the patient as well as observable to an observer are called as objectives. But objective symptoms or signs are generally the common to the pathologies. So you can see the tumor, you can see any swelling, you can see any specific eruption. So those are related with the pathologies which are there with the objectives. And where to differentiate one patient from another patient is rather difficult than the subjective. So with subjective, it is very easy to reach to the right remedy because everyone presents their subjective symptoms with their own individuality. And that's why the subjective plays very vital role. Subjective and objective symptoms are to be elicited and recorded. Sometimes this will require the utmost ingenuity to elicit the necessary intelligent replies without leading question. The physician's degree of success in obtaining the proper symptoms picture lies in his skills and patience. So this is too important. When you are dealing with the patient, it always depends upon your skill and patience. Patience is the most important part. You should not get disturbed during case taking. You should keep your patience, go on listening. Most important character one must develop is the listening. So listening is the part and parcel of your patience because patient wants to narrate many things. Patient wants to tell you many things. And if you listen them properly, he feels relaxed, he feels better. The process of cure starts right from there. And that's why one of the important quality one should develop in them is the listening quality as well as the patience. Second important thing which he has mentioned, that you should not go with the leading question. Question should be so properly formed that patient will answer it in a proper way with a description. It should not be a leading like which answers with a specific way. It should not like that. It should not like affirmative or negative. It should be a properly formed question. So always make a habit how you will going to ask the question to the patient. We cannot rush these patients through. We must be good listeners. See, again he comes to the same point. We must be good listeners. Get the patient to the talking and tactfully keep him talking about the symptoms rather than wandering far afield. Means if the patient is on track, don't disturb him. If he is explaining everything, just go on listening. But if he is leaving the track, then it is time to interrupt. Till that period, you should not interrupt. Then then cultivate your powers of listening and give your powers of observation full sway to form the complete picture of the little details and habits of your patient. You go on listening, you just go on observing while listening. Many times you get patient is sitting in front of you and you ask the question and he do this. This is very simple. You have to watch that what he's doing. He's biting his nails. Catch that. That is very important. In small children, you just go on observing, they bore their nose. You just observe, they keep their fingers inside the mouth. All those things matters a lot. So your observation power should be very clear and you should be a very good listener. Patient who is coughing over there in a single paroxysm, you must listen. Patient is coughing. This is the way patient is coughing. You should be a good listener. Catch it, find it out, open the repertory, get the calcarea carb. Yes, Ali has said correctly. Sometimes it is two paroxysms in succession. Then you have many remedies. Then we have belladonna, then we have Merksol, then we have pulsatilla. So catch them very clearly so that listening is such a big thing which we have to cultivate. So then cultivate your powers of listening and give your powers of observation full sway to form the complete picture of the little details and habits of your patient. It has been said that criminal lawyers should be a medical man. It is eminently necessary, however, that homeopathic physicians be past masters of art of cross-examination. See, very nicely he has compared with the lawyers. The way they do the cross-examination in the court, in the similar manner, it is your duty to go for cross-examination. Once case is finished, you have to do a cross-examination of the patient so that you can get what you desire from the patient. It has been said that criminal lawyers should be medical men. It is eminently necessary, however, that homeopathic physicians be past masters of art of cross-examination and the observance of the patient's every movement and expression should be a matter of record. So everything what you observe, very important. Whatever the patient expresses is very important, and it is your duty to write it down, catch it and write it down so that you can get a portrait. Portrait is very necessary because from that portrait, you're going to get a totality. You're going to get a perfect picture. Before leaving the case, go over again the family history, the personal history, the mental and physical symptoms. So he says, before leaving the case, go through the past history, go to the personal history, go with the family history, the mental and physical symptoms, so that if patient forgets anything, he might add. Consider the temperament. Very important. Consider what is the temperament of the person, the habits, the occupation, the personality of the patient. Ask yourself if you have skipped anything. See that you have questioned every atom, every function. Question the modalities in particular. Go over the previous drug treatment and consider that also. Remember that the nature and sensation of symptoms, the time of day, the positions and circumstances under which the symptoms appear are the most important modifiers of any given case. So all the modalities plays very vital role. At what time the patient gets the complaint? What are the things which settles the patient's complaints? What are the things which aggravates the patient complaints? So time and circumstances plays very vital role. Certain people gives you certain idea. They says, doctor, I'm having problem every time whenever there is pneumonia. Finished. This is very important for you. So you must be very, very good listener. At the same time, you develop or cultivate that art of listening to the patient and finding it out what is needed for you. To clarify these general instructions, let us take a matter in a great detail and go over together the following requirements. So he has mentioned many requirements over there. In chronic work, it is necessary to take into consideration the general symptoms. By general symptoms, we mean those symptoms which pertain to the patient as a whole or to the complaint which brings to us. It will, in order to get a complete picture of the case as a whole, let us consider these elements. So what he is explaining? He is explaining that when you are dealing with the chronic cases, general symptoms plays a very vital role. Look toward the patient. Observe the generalities. Observe both the mental generals as well as physical general, so that you can catch all of them, and with which it becomes very easy to reach to the right simile. I think we'll stop over here, and we'll on Monday's session we'll finish this chapter. So we are completing one more chapter, the taking the case, in next lecture. So we are coming to a good practical card, because next chapter is also important for us, analysis of the case. So that's all for today, and today evening we'll again meet at 8:15 with the part 2 of Ignatia Mara. So we'll finish that remedy in today's session. So we are going in a right direction. Only thing is that sometimes I missed many lectures due to some reasons. There was big work going on, and that's why it was not possible to conduct sessions in this week. But next week we'll continue with the same. So that's all for today. Thank you, and meet again. Ali, I'm happy that you are again there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll meet at 8:15.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.